Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel AWS DevOps NIT 11. So in this video, we will see how to build a Maven project on a Jenkins slave using the Jenkins pipeline. So the point to note, we are going to build a Maven project on the Jenkins slave, not on the Jenkins server. Okay, and we will use the pipeline script to build that Maven project and generate an artifact. So what is Jenkins pipeline? So in fact, if you watch my previous video on the Jenkins pipeline, I have given more details about what is a pipeline, what are all the different types of pipeline. And we also did the lab demo on how to clone a GitHub repository using the pipeline script. So if at all you have not watched my video, so you can click on the link above and you can watch my previous video on the Jenkins pipeline. So Jenkins pipeline, as I had discussed in my last video, it is basically a suite of plugins which supports implementing and integrating the continuous delivery pipelines into Jenkins. So we also saw there are two types of pipelines. So we have a declarative pipeline and there is a scripted pipeline, right? So scripted pipeline typically needs Groovy programming knowledge skills. Why? Because typically scripted pipelines are written in the Groovy language. So declarative pipeline is a recently introduced pipeline, which is very commonly used. It has a standard syntax, right? And it enables reading and writing the pipeline code easier. So whatever we are going to use in our lab demo is typically going to use the declarative pipeline. So the pipeline syntax. So if you see on the declarative pipeline, so typically it is going to start with a keyword called pipeline. And then if at all you are implementing the pipeline directly on the Jenkins node, it will be agent any. But if at all you have configured any slave node, then you will have to refer the name of the slave node here in the pipeline script. And we define the stages. So it can be the cloning of the repository stage, it can be the build stage, it can be the test stage, deploy stage, etc. Right? So here in our lab today, we are typically going to focus on the build stage, and we will see how do you build a project using Maven, because we are going to use a Java project. So how do we build a Java project using Maven, and how do we formulate the build code within our pipeline script? That's what we are going to see today. Okay, so now let's go through the lab steps. The first step, I'm going to set up Jenkins in a Ubuntu AMI. So this lab will be done on a Ubuntu environment. The second step, so we have to install Java and Maven on the slave machine, because we are going to execute the pipeline script on the slave machine, not on the Jenkins master, right? So basically on the slave, we have to install Java and Maven. And even for the first step, installing the Jenkins in Ubuntu, of course, we are going to install the Java as well. Now, as a third step, on the Jenkins console, we will be installing all the recommended plugins. Then we will be adding the credentials for authentication between the Jenkins master and the Jenkins slave. And then we will configure a slave on the Jenkins console. So we need to add a node which will be acting as a slave for the Jenkins master. Then we will be creating a pipeline job to build the Maven project on the Jenkins slave by using the pipeline script. Okay, and if at all we have time, we will also see how do you build the project on the Jenkins slave using the pipeline script from SCM option. So there basically we will be uploading the file directly on the GitHub repository itself, which is going to have the pipeline code. So if at all we have a time for this step within this video, we will be doing the step 5, or otherwise I'll be sharing a separate video for the point number 5. So now let us go ahead with our lab steps. So the first step is we need to set up Jenkins on the Ubuntu instance. So let me go back to my AWS console. So I am in the North Virginia region. So let us go ahead and launch an instance for Jenkins. So I will name it as Jenkins_master. And since it is going to be Ubuntu, I will be selecting the Ubuntu AMI, and we will go with this Ubuntu server 22.04. An instance type, I will leave it to t2.micro. And key pair, let me create a new key pair. I'll put the today's date. And let it be in the PEM format, because I'm going to access these instances via mobile xterm, which will accept the .pem format of the key. So let me go ahead and create the key pair. And security group, for now, I'll open the SSH from my IP address. And then let me go ahead and launch the instance. So while this instance is launching, we will also launch the instance which will be acting as a Jenkins slave. I'll click launch instances. And I will name it as Jenkins underscore slave. So again, I'll be selecting the Ubuntu AMI. Sorry, I think that window got closed. I'm doing it again. Jenkins underscore slave. Please select the Ubuntu AMI. Instance type t2.micro. Key pair. So I will select the key pair what I had created. This is 11/2/2024. And security group, let me allow the SSH access from anywhere. I will leave it like that because this instance has to accept the SSH connection from the Jenkins master, right? So I will just leave it as SSH traffic from anywhere. And let me go ahead and launch this instance. Okay, so maybe while this is launching, I think our Jenkins master is ready. So what we will do, let's go ahead and set up the Jenkins on this Ubuntu instance. So let me log into this instance. I will take the public IP address. So I'm going to use mobile xterm, so in which we can upload the keys in the .pem format. So let me click session here. I click SSH. So what is the remote host? I'll put in the public IP address. And username for Ubuntu AMI will be Ubuntu. And I click advanced SSH settings. I click use private key. Then I will select the key what I just created. And I click OK. So let me click accept here. Okay, so now I'm on to my first instance where we are going to set up Jenkins. So I will switch to the root. Let me increase the font a little bit. Okay, so just for our identification, let me rename this session as Jenkins underscore master. Now, this is my notepad with the steps. So let us go ahead with the steps one by one. First is before installing the Jenkins, we have to update the packages and we'll have to download the Jenkins key for the authentication and add the packages to the the local system. So we'll do that one by one. First is, let me copy this command apt-get update, and we will first update the packages on the server. Fine. So the packages has been updated. The second step, we have to download the Jenkins key quickly for the authentication, and we will be adding it to the user share keyrings folder within this Ubuntu system. And we are typically downloading this key from the package.jenkins.io link. So let me use this curl command, which will download the key and it will be copying it to the user share keyrings directory. Right, so that step is done. Now what we will do, we will be downloading the Jenkins package available for Ubuntu from the same URL package.jenkins.io, right? And the Ubuntu compatible package is this one. It is available under the Debian-stable, and we are actually going to copy that to this particular directory within the Ubuntu system, which is etc app sources.list.c. So let me copy this command. Okay. Now what we will do, the next step, we are going to install Java. Before installing Jenkins, we'll have to install the Java, that is the Java version 11. So let me use this command to install the Java version 11. Okay, let me say yes here. Okay, so Java has been installed. Let us verify the version of Java. Java minus version, you can see here it is 11.0.21 version. Okay, so now since we have downloaded some of the packages from the Jenkins portal, what I will do, let me do the update of the packages again. So let me execute this command apt-get update again. Okay. So now let us go ahead and install Jenkins. Apt-get install Jenkins. Okay, so now the Jenkins package has been installed. Now let us start the Jenkins process. I'll use this command, systemctl start Jenkins. So now we'll verify whether Jenkins is running properly. So let me use this command, systemctl status Jenkins. So you can see here, it is active and running. Okay, so now Jenkins has been configured. So now next step, what we need to do is we have to open the port 8080 in the security group, right? In order to access the Jenkins console, since Jenkins runs on port 8080, the port has to be open in the security group. That's what I will do next. So let me go to my instance and I go into the security here. And I'll go to the security groups. And I'll click edit inbound rules. I will add a rule, custom TCP port 8080, and I will open it from anywhere. Let me save these rules. So this completes the setup for Jenkins. So now what we'll do, we will log into the slave machine and we will be installing the Java as well as Maven on the slave machine, because ours is a Java project. So we have to build it using Maven, right? So now let me log into the other EC2 instance, which is a Jenkins slave. Okay, so let me log into the slave system. Let me copy the IP address and I'll open a new session. Remote host, specify username. It will be Ubuntu. Then advanced SSH settings. I will select the same private key that I created and click OK. Okay, so I'm on the slave machine. Okay, let me increase the font size. And for this session also, I will rename it as Jenkins underscore slave for easy identification. Okay, so now on the slave machine, what is the first step we need to do? We have to mainly install Java and Maven. So before that, I will update the packages on the slave machine with this command apt-get update. right? So the next step would be to install Java, this command. The same thing what we did for the Jenkins master. Yes. Okay, Java has been installed. Let us verify the version of Java. Okay, same 11.0.21. Now what we need to do, we need to install Maven, right? So what I will do is I will do that in the OPT directory where we need to download Maven, right? So I already have the link which is having the Maven version 3.8.8. Okay, so I typically got it from this. If I search in Google download Maven, it is going to take me to this page, and I'm going for the version 3.8.8, considered to be more stable. So I have done the copy link address. So I will directly give wget on the copy link address, which is going to download the Maven version 3.8.8. Let me copy this command. Okay, so Maven has been downloaded. Now we need to extract the packages. You can see that it is in the tar.gz format. So I'm going to give the command tar minus xvzf and give this file name. Okay, so now Maven has been extracted. So as per best practice, I'm going to remove the file that we downloaded. And let us verify if Maven is working fine. I will navigate to this Apache Maven 3.8.8 directory. Then I will go to bin and I will give the command mvn minus minus version. Okay, you can see that we are able to see the Maven version 3.8.8. So yeah, basically now we are done with the setup of the slave system also, wherein we have installed the Java and we have installed the Maven as well. Now we will come back to the Jenkins console. And first thing is, we will change the admin password on the Jenkins console. Okay, so let me log into the Jenkins console. So I will grab the IP address of the Jenkins master. I will say colon 8080. And we have already opened this port in the security group. Okay, so now we need an initial admin password. So what I will do, I will copy this. I'll go to my Jenkins master system and I will say cat. Like this session is kind of timed out. Let me duplicate this tab. Okay, let me switch to the root. Okay, now I will say cat and the path from where we can get the initial admin password. So let me copy this password and I will paste it here. Click continue. And it is asking us to install some selected plugins. So basically what I will do, we will go ahead and install the basic plugins that is required. So selecting the first option, install the suggested plugins. Okay, so now the required plugins has been installed. So what I will do is I'll click the skip and continue as admin. And I'll click save and finish here. So now the Jenkins is ready. We can start using Jenkins. Okay, so this is our home screen. So now what is our next step? We need to add the credentials because the Jenkins master has to authenticate with the Jenkins slave, right? So basically the authentication happens via the credential. So in this case, I'm going to add a private key as an authentication mechanism. Okay. So how do you add the credentials in Jenkins? So we go to manage Jenkins, and then I click credentials here. So here we can add credentials. So the credentials will be, so we'll have to put the below information. So kind will be SSH username with a private key, right? So let me select the option SSH username with a private key, right? And what should be the scope? Scope is global. So I'll leave it to global Jenkins nodes items. And what is the ID? So ID will be Jenkins underscore slave, because using this key, the Jenkins master will be authenticating with the slave machine. So I will say Jenkins underscore slave. It can be any name. I'm using the name Jenkins underscore slave. And what is the username? Because we are going to give the private key for the Ubuntu user, right? So username, I'm going to say Ubuntu. And so private key. So here, private key, enter directly. Yes, I want to enter it directly. And I'll click add here. And I'll have to, mention the key text for this, the private key, whatever I'm going to upload. So typically I'm going to upload this the private key, which is that 11 to 2024, what I just created, right? So this will be my key content. So let me copy this and then I will paste it there. So that is it. Now let us go ahead and click create. So paraphrase, let me see if there is any other option that we need to select. Okay, I think there is nothing else. So we can just go ahead and click create. So now the credentials has been created for the Jenkins master to authenticate with the Jenkins slave. Okay, so now what is our next step? So we have to add the slave node to the Jenkins console, right? So how do we add a slave node? So let me go back to manage Jenkins, and here we have nodes, right? So let me click nodes here, and I will click new node, and I can give it a name Jenkins underscore slave, and it will be a permanent agent. Let me click create here, and number of executors, basically I can just give 3. It will be the number of jobs that we can execute simultaneously on the slave machine. For the remote root directory, maybe I will say home Ubuntu / Jenkins, so that whenever you build a job in Jenkins, the job entries will be found under this particular directory. And label. So what would be the label for the slave? I'm going to name it as same Jenkins underscore slave, and use this node as much as possible. Launch method, so I will say launch agents via SSH, because since we have added the credentials for the SSH private key, let me select the launch method as agents via SSH. And host, so what is the slave machine to which this master will be connected to? It will be the private IP address of the Jenkins slave. Okay, because whenever you stop and restart the instance, the public IP will get changed. That is the reason I'm just preferring a private IP, because both the instances are anywhere within the same region. So we can use the private IP itself. So let me copy the private IP address of the slave machine, and I will paste it here. And what should be the credentials for authentication? It is the private key, the Ubuntu, what we created, right? The credentials label, whatever we had given to the credentials, is the Ubuntu username. So let me select Ubuntu here. And host key verification strategy, better to just go with this non-verifying verification strategy to avoid any warning messages or errors. So that is it. Availability, we can leave it to keep this agent online as much as possible. And let me go ahead and click save. Okay, so let us see if the slave machine has been discovered successfully. Yes, you can see here. This is our slave machine, which is successfully discovered by the Jenkins master. And you can also see this message. It is in sync. So this is a confirmation that the slave is successfully discovered by the Jenkins master. Okay, so now what is our next step? So we have set up the Jenkins master. We have set up the slave machine. And we have also, configured the slave node as well. Now, the next step is we need to create a pipeline job in order to build our project, the Java project on the slave machine. Okay. So now what I will do, let me go ahead and create a job. I go to the dashboard. I click new item here, and I will say my pipeline job for Maven build. Okay, so this is the name I will use. This is my pipeline job, which is going to build the Maven project. And I'm going to select pipeline here because since we installed all the basic plugins, pipeline plugin is also one among that. So that also got installed. So let me select the pipeline plugin and click OK. So this job will build the Java project using Maven, and the build will be done on the slave node. Right? That is the main thing. We are building the code on the slave machine, not on the Jenkins master. Okay, so now let us directly go ahead and configure our pipeline script. So first I will go with this first option, pipeline script. So let me copy our pipeline script, one with the declarative pipeline, right? So let me copy this. Okay, so this is how the pipeline script will look like. So I'm using the declarative pipeline syntax will start with pipeline, right? And agent node label. So this is very important. So basically the label name should match the node, whatever we have configured as a Jenkins slave. So anyway, we have named it as Jenkins underscore slave only. If you want, we can just verify it once. Let me duplicate this tab. So if I go into the dashboard and if I go to manage Jenkins, and if I go into the nodes, so you can see here, what is the name of the node? It is Jenkins underscore slave, right? So the same name that we are giving it here, label, execute this pipeline on this node with the label Jenkins underscore slave, right? And we are also telling, Jenkins, where is our Maven? This is very important, right? So we are defining environment here, and we are also defining the path. Where is Maven? Because the project has to be built using Maven, right? So this pipeline script should know where is Maven. So that is a path that we have defined, right? And as part of the stages, so this is our first stage where we are cloning the GitHub repository code, right? We are basically cloning the content of the GitHub repository. So this is my GitHub repository from where the code will be cloned, right? And then the next step is the build stage. First is a Git cloning stage, and second is the build stage, where we are actually using the command men clean install in order to build the project and generate an artifact. Okay, so once the project is built, the artifact will be generated, which will be the webapp.war. That will be the artifact that will be created after the building of the project. Okay, so basically we can verify for this war file if it has been created successfully once the project is built. Okay, so now this is how the pipeline, the declarative pipeline looks like, where we are executing it first on the Jenkins slave, and we are defining the path for Maven under the environment. And then we are, as part of the stage one, we are actually cloning the GitHub repository. And as part of the stage build, we are actually executing men clean and install to build the project and generate the artifact. Okay, so now let me click apply and let me save this job. Now let us go ahead and build this job. We'll see if it is able to build successfully. I click build now here. So let me go into the console output. Okay, so we can see here it is in the process of building the project. So it is downloading all the plugins from the Maven repository, the central Maven repository. And you can see that the build is a success. Okay. And it has typically executed on the slave machine, which we can verify it. So now the build is a success. And what we'll do is I will log into the slave machine and we will verify if the artifact is created. So which is my Jenkins slave? This is my Jenkins slave. And what is the path that we had defined for the build artifacts? It is home Ubuntu, right? I think this session is also expired. So let me just duplicate this tab. Okay. So I'm in the slave machine. Let me switch to the root. Okay. So now we can verify it under the /home/Ubuntu. So if I go into /home/Ubuntu, this is the root directory that we had mentioned in our job configuration, right? So Jenkins. Okay, so now if I go under Jenkins, there is a workspace directory which is created. Under workspace, we will have the entry for our job. So this is my job name, my pipeline job for Maven build. And my code will be under web app. So cd web app. And since the project got built, we see that there is a target directory which got created, right? So I will navigate to the target directory, and if I give a ls-l, you can see here, this is our artifact which got generated after the build of the project, right? Which we built using the pipeline script. So let us verify the timestamp. If I give the date command, you can see now it is 2:1. The artifact just got generated 2 minutes before. Okay, so this is how you build a Java project using Maven, using a pipeline script. That is number one. And secondly, you have built it on the slave machine. This is how you build it on the slave machine. Okay, so we create a slave node and then we will refer the slave node's label in our pipeline script. Okay. So I hope this video was helpful in explaining the pipeline script and how to use it to build your Java project using Maven. So I also just wanted to update that I do take trainings on AWS and DevOps, right? So if at all anyone wants to take up the training sessions from me, you can send an email to the mentioned email ID and I'll be furnishing details about the courses. Okay, so the training mode will be typically via the Zoom, and the class recording at the end of every session will be uploaded onto the Google Drive, and I'll be sharing the access to the Google Drive. So whether it is AWS or DevOps, it is going to be spanning for 5 to 6 weeks, and it is going to be an interactive course completely focused on the hands-on lab exercises. Okay, so anyone interested for these trainings, you can send an email to this email ID. So that's all I had for this video. I hope the content was helpful. If you like this content, you can feel free to share it with your known circles.